Some shoulder movement to start your day, the ready state inspired with some twists and some additions. Starting with just some big arm circles forward. And some things we're looking for here is, can I elevate my shoulder nice and high? Can I reach forward? Can I pull it down? And then can I pull it back? So can I really trace as big of a circle as possible? Very controlled, so along the lines of doing a car, which is a controlled articular rotation. And the goal here, we'll get about 10. You can also play with your hand orientation overhead, trying to keep it turned out, trying to keep it wound up and turned out the other way. But the big thing is staying in the same plane to a certain degree and getting big circles and getting that shoulder blade, that scapula involved in these circles. We'll go other side, same idea. Nice and high with the shoulder, reach out front, drop it down, and then pull it back. So anatomically, we'd be talking elevation, protraction, depression, retraction. And the goal here is get some motion across that shoulder blade. Play with that hand orientation, trying to keep it wound up one way overhead, or completely spin it around and try and keep it wound up the other way. So internal and external rotation. We'll get about 10. And from there, we'll reverse it. We'll start with some protraction, so reaching up overhead, retract and come through. Again, your options are play with the hand a little bit, but really try and get that shoulder blade to move freely and trace big circles, staying in the same plane as much as you can. Once we've done about 10, same idea, other side. So just reversing the circle and thinking reach with the scap, elevate, reach behind, and then depress, pull it down. Shoulder forward, shoulder up towards the ear, shoulder reach back, and then shoulder down away from the ear. From there, we'll get our feet and our hips moving a little bit with this one. And I like this one a lot, and I basically kind of heard it described as like throughout this little shoulder spin up, if you will, you could hit some ranges of motion that you may or most likely will not hit in your daily life. And this is kind of one of those. So basically the goal here is loose with the arms, kind of thinking heavy hands. And as I tap my shoulder with the arm that comes across my body, my other hand rides up into a little bit of internal rotation, almost like it's trying to touch that opposite shoulder blade. It's very loose, it's not strict. And the goal here is not to really make this really muscular at all. The goal here is to just hit some different angles across the shoulder that may not be touched in your daily life. We'll just get a couple of these, and again, you can play with your feet, you can play with your hips on this one. On this next one, my feet will be a little bit more static. We're gonna open up lateral line. And almost thinking like a golf swing to a certain degree. I wanna get some length on that lateral line. The other hand just follows suit and then come through. And this one, very much so, I like to think, heavy hands in the bottom. Heavy hands in the bottom. Hips and feet may play a small role, but in general, my goal is length from my hip all the way up to that fingertip on that same side. And again, potentially, a pretty high angle in that overhead position that may not be touched in your daily life. So it's nice to at least touch it first thing in the morning. From there, very, very basic arm hugs. I've heard these called a lot of things. I've always called them arm hugs from back in the day. Velocity Sports Performance. Hands about shoulder height, but also, again, play with angles here. By all means, drop them a little bit. And you're just coming around and trying to tap the opposite shoulder or the back of the opposite shoulder. You can put the hands a little bit higher. Do what feels good, hit angles across the shoulders. But again, just some basic motion. This is, you can call this a very light warm-up, but the shoulder's so mobile. The goal here is to not just have a day in which it just stays here and here all day and doesn't move from this position. The goal here is to get some motion and hit these angles across the shoulder. And then from here, we're thinking shoulder extension. It's almost like some type of doggy paddle in the water with a little wrist flick in the back. So when I finish, I'm trying to go into a little wrist flexion so I get just more length all the way up into that shoulder. And again, I'm not being super forceful. I'm not trying to throw those hands back super aggressively. I'm also not losing my upper body position. I'm just getting some heavy hands in the bottom and I carry that through to a little wrist flick and back. And we're almost done. We're just gonna wind up the shoulder with some internal and external rotation. And then we've hit some good angles across the shoulder to start the day. This goes great with the hip opener that also takes about 8 minutes. So from here, I like to finish with, the goal here is I want to get length, I want to get separation. So I like to start with some internal rotation. So I internally rotate. From there, I'm going to flex my wrist, and then my goal is pull my shoulders down and then try and elongate, try and get as much length in between my shoulder blades as I can. So I'm thinking of reaching with the back portion of my wrist. I'm reaching to opposite walls in a very internally rotated position and a very flexed wrist position. So potentially a little neural gliding, a little flossing here. And the goal here, again, internal rotation, I think a lot of times just happens in people's everyday life when they're reaching for stuff, i.e. like when you're in the car and you're reaching behind your seat, trying to find something, get that extra inch or two to grab something. And it's a very funky position and pretty vulnerable across the shoulder, so it's at least touch it in a controlled state before I do it in a more kind of reactive state. Reach, 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 and then the opposite. Now I'm gonna externally rotate. I'm gonna extend the wrist, and I'm thinking again, shoulders down, and I'm trying to separate and create as much length, as big of a wingspan as I can get, and then pull those fingertips down to the ground, or you can think of pulling them down to your body, but I'm reaching with the palms. I'm reaching, reaching, reaching. This one can be a little spicy, a little gnarly. It's a very nice stretch across the shoulder girdle and arms. Just see what you can get. And then relax. And basically we're gonna wring out the towel now. So we're gonna go one arm internally rotated, one externally rotated, and we're just gonna alternate. Try and keep the hands in relatively the same spot, but big rotation. And then I like to play with this a little bit, kind of get my torso involved. Think reach, reach, reach. So finishing with some nice rotation across the shoulder. May get a little spicy, but again here, the goal here is motion, not necessarily strength oriented, not really mobility oriented either. Just kind of getting your shoulders started on a good note, hitting different ranges, different angles across the shoulder.